But notice that the first 2100 years, which in Jewish shorthand is 2000, because this is the 50-year voting period and this is a 50-year voting period for the unbeliever. That 2100 years is the time, is two houses of 1050 and 1050, okay, for the Gentiles. Got that? So we mark them off as that. Now, again, if you want to have a shorthand way of talking about this, you're just going to talk about 70, because there's one 70-year period and a 1050. So if you wanted to reference a whole millennia voting period, and you wanted to stress the voting of believers, you're going to divide or configure any meter you've got in 70s. It's called sabbatical accounting, and it's done in the Bible a lot. That's why there's the rule about the sabbatical years. Okay, that's the first shorthand way of saying here's a house of 1050 years, and here's a house of 1050 years, stressing the role of believer voting, is by dividing something or counting something in 70s. Okay? Now the second way to do that, all right, and this is another thing that Moses does in Psalm 90, and this is what the Jews actually use in the law, is to use 50s. If I just talk about 50s, I'm talking about the whole 1050, but I'm stressing the voting period of the unbeliever, which to the Jew was called the Gentiles. A Gentile was anybody who didn't believe in Adonai Elokeinu. All right? So when they stress 50s, they're talking about the Gentiles. That's anybody who's not Jewish. I mean, because in those days, if you believed in Christ, that made you a Jew. All right? Just like it made Abraham a Jew when he first believed. And he went from Abraham, well, we'll get to there in a minute. But see how, if I just say 50, that's shorthand for 1050. Because I'm emphasizing the voting period of the 50 years for the unbelievers. So in the Jewish law, this is called Jubilee. Okay? It means that the time is ending. See how this is coming up at the end of the 1050? The time is ending. And everything shubs, returns back to being new again. The next 1050 can be born because this one completed. So that's why they call it Jubilee. It means, oh, we had a successful conclusion to the 1050. They're stressing the 50 when they say that. The last 50 years are the most important. Okay, because if those 50 years don't complete and they're based on, people who are the most negative voting yes, if they don't complete, then there's no, this thing here, this next one, this plus, can't occur if this part of it, doesn't finish. See that? So if I were to write a poem and I made it 50 syllables, I'd be stressing this part of history if I made a time poem. Because that's what Psalm 90 is. It's a time poem. I mean, it's not poem the way we Westerns think of it. That's a mistake Christian scholars make. They think that Bible Hebrew meter is supposed to conform to Western standards. No, a poem doesn't have to rhyme. All right? But it does have a structure that's a rhythm. And this is the rhythm that God chooses for Psalm 90. And he also chooses this rhythm for Psalm 90, right here. Where do we want to put it? 70. Okay? So what's 70 times 50? All right, or 7 times 50? 350, and that's how many syllables are in Psalm 90. All right, as you're going to see in the next video. But let me just finish the rest of this one so that you can see where we're going to end up going. Okay, so Moses is accounting, and the Jews are accounting using this shorthand. The Jews in particular are using the 50 years shorthand right here. When they talk about a week of millennia, they're looking at the 50-year period because that's the end of it. All right? When Moses does his thing in Psalm 90, and Isaiah will do the same thing, he's using the 70-year period because he's trying to stress the Jews voting. Okay, so he tracks the first one, which is Adam. Okay, let me match the color here. The first one is Adam. Alright, the second one is Jared. And that completes the 50. And the unbelievers, enough unbelievers voted for time to continue. Okay, the third person to vote was Enoch. They weren't the only ones, but these are the poster boys, okay? The third one to vote was Enoch. That enabled enough time to continue so that Noah could be born and vote. And he actually votes during the 70-year period there. Okay? And then then because of Noah's vote, another 490 can continue, and that's where the second 1050 ends. Alright? And it ends, of course, with the flood and Noah coming out and having his own kids. Alright. So, that actual period here, let me do it again. This actually takes you to Abram. And it actually takes you to his own voting. Alright? Abram ends up voting just as, I really should have put it right here. Okay, let's scratch that. Okay? Abram votes right here. Right at the very end of Noah's 490. It's just in time. Just in time. Time would have stopped if he didn't vote then. And that was actually the 2046 from Adam is when Abram votes. Alright, so it's not quite the 2100 you're seeing here. It's really in 2046, and that's really important in Jewish accounting later. This is the reason, because he voted a little early, this is the reason why the temple could go on living 30 years after Christ died, 40 years after Christ died. It's a sort of credit, because he's 54 years early here. Alright? So, the house that you're looking at here, the Gentile house in Jewish accounting, Jewish dispensationalism, is basically, as we just saw here, Adam to Jared to Enoch to Noah. And then that ends that. Now, in the next video, I'll continue talking about these other two 2,000-year units.